Hello and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the YouTube and social media show where we try and pick apart all of the things that's going on in today's politics and try and come up with a way of fixing them. I'm Ian.
I'm Nigel.
And we're quite angry. I think a lot of people are quite angry about the state of the country, but I'm also angry about some of the people who are angry. I'm angry about the people who think that it's fine to be shouting at buildings because they don't like some of the people inside them. But I'm also angry at some of the idiot politicians who are thinking that the answer to crime in London is to paint a purple line down Oxford Street warning you not to get your phone snatched rather than nicking the people who are doing it. I think we're in a bizarre place, and the internet seems to be the place where everybody talks about it, and we thought we should be doing the same.
100%. 100%. And look, it's weird, isn't it? Because I've spent most of my life trying to not be angry, to try and be, a calm amidst a storm. That's kind of my thing. It's like I try and be pragmatic and I try and be relatively chilled about stuff. But the fact is, I look at things now and for me, there's only two reactions to things right now. It's either a massive sigh and a decision to kind of, hide behind my door and close the curtains and put Netflix on and ignore the fact that these things are going on, or to get genuinely furious about the whole thing. And you're completely right. It's not about a political angle. It's not about being angry with one group of people or being angry with one particular problem. I'm angry with the whole lot. The whole way this country is working or not. The way in which our politicians of all colours and flavours are trying to deal with it, because I don't think they are, or at least not deal with the root cause of everything that's wrong. And all of the other people as well who are just too busy being divisive and looking at people to blame, because for me, it's not about blame. It's not about one group being responsible for what has happened. We can have that debate if we want to, but the reality is that this is a long and steady decline, and I would argue a managed decline from what this country was a while ago, and pick your year if you wish, to where we are today.
And that's quite a debate as to which year you would pick at the point where it's done.
Yeah.
I was actually in the pub last night talking with some friends, and we were trying to find the point where the decline started. And I was suggesting, like the early 90s, and somebody else was suggesting the mid 90s, and somebody else was like, no, the 70s were awful. And it's like, where exactly do we have to go back to? But wherever you start the curve, I think there is a pretty clear understanding now about amongst increasing numbers of people that the rate of decline is increasing.
Yes.
We are sliding towards, I don't want to say the abyss, but we are sliding towards a place where everything's getting worse and people are completely losing hope that someone's going to do something about it. And this, I think, is where, when we initially had another conversation in a different pub, but we started talking about this, it was, Reform are going to win the election, and they don't have any answers either. So what we're going to try and do on this show is to come up with some of the answers. Because with the best will in the world, while I'm quite entertained by Reform asking the questions that nobody else wants to go out there and ask, sometimes they're not asking for a good reason. They're just, frankly, dog whistle racists. Right? And I'm sorry, but some of them are.
That's true.
And the other part is that some of them just don't really seem to have a clue how anything works. We've seen this with some of the Reform councillors and the new councils that they're running. I mean, the leader of which is it, Warwickshire Council? He's 19, and he's just committed. He's just committed an egregious contempt of court about a trial that's actually going on now, and he's like, well, "What's wrong with that?" It's like, you can't just think you can pull anybody in off the street, stick them in office, and they're going to do a better job than the politicians, right? As lovely as that might be, you've actually got to put people in who have a clue what they're doing.
No, completely. But that brings it back to, for me, everything that is broken in that system, right? Which is that even when you get people who are, I don't know, questioning the whole thing themselves. You get these politicians coming in from like Reform are the new up and coming party and everything
They
else.
are.
They're still ultimately trying to conform, even though they're doing a bad job of it, to a system that just doesn't seem to work in any way, shape, or form. It's not. And when I think about if I think about our mainstream politicians, of which Nigel Farage is one, and again, he might try to paint a picture of himself as an outsider. He's
He's
not.
not.
He is absolutely a part of the system, and he has been for 25, 30 years.
And he's made a fortune off it.
And he's made a lot of money off it. But when I look at these mainstream politicians at the moment, of which, look, hey, we have our supporters. We support. There are a number of them that we support ourselves and that we want to do well. They are so middle of the road right now in terms of, I don't know whether it's rabbit in headlights. They don't know what to do because the mess is just so insanely bad that it's like, how do you do battlefield triage when everyone's dead, Or whether they just are so deluded because they are in a system and it's like, this is how we have always done things, this is how we do things. It's like we take a pragmatic approach, we deal with the problem when it comes in, and we try and fix it by making sure that we make it a little bit better.
You've just used the word deluded, right? I've seen quite a few. I'm on X, and some of these clips are going to be put out on X. Well, right? But on X, it's entertaining, right? And I know a lot of people are now getting their news on there. But there's increasing posts from a very small number of loud people who are basically shouting about Keir Starmer's government. And by the way, I didn't vote for Keir Starmer's government, right? You might well have done, but I didn't. And I think they're doing an increasingly awful job. But you've got these ranty posts going on about the fact that it's an illegitimate government and it needs to be overthrown and it's doing this and it's done this and it's done that. And various people are going, hang on a second, you're describing the previous government who did that and did the other. And it's like, we're at the point where it's almost continuity, the blob, right? The blob, as Liz Truss has tried to describe it. She might actually have been right, because I started calling it LabCon, the LabCon, because Labour and Conservative have practically merged in the middle. Although the Tories left for Reform because they thought that the Tories had gone socialist, and now the actual supposed socialists have come in with Labour. The online Reform Mary Whitehouse was right bill, right? The Online Safety Act. Labour, while the Tories were bringing it in, said it was a very bad idea, right? It's now dropped into existence with the Tories passing it when they were still in the government, and now Labour are defending the thing that they were attacking previously. So it's like the world has gone mad when it's like, when I'm out of office, I think this is a terrible thing, but now I'm in office, I think it's a marvellous thing. No wonder people are fed up and angry.
Yeah, and have no trust, right? It's like, how can you trust something when there are no principles anymore?
How can you trust a government that talks about homelessness and then has the Minister of Homelessness as a buy-to-let landlord throwing people out on the street?
Exactly, right? And it there are so many examples in just 12 months of Labour being in power. And again, look, I'll hold my hand up. I'm a Labour supporter. I'm a card-carrying member and everything else. But like all card-carrying members of a political party, it doesn't mean you always agree with everything they're doing. And I think I speak for a massive number of Labour members right now who are just increasingly disillusioned. And it's not that we're saying, hey, we're going to stop voting Labour because they're so terrible. I don't believe in that idea of you jump around every year because they're not doing exactly what you want. Politics is compromise. Supporting a political party is compromise. It's just right now what I and other Labour members are being asked to compromise on is literally everything. It's like there is not a single thing right now, or it feels like this, that is certainly cutting through in terms of a truly Labour
concept. But you're compromising. You're having to compromise, and you're absolutely right. And Conservative members were compromising when they were in government. But increasingly, people don't seem to want to compromise. There's kind of, I am right, and everybody else must be wrong if they disagree. That's really dangerous. And that's the bit where a lot of social media thought bubbles trap people in, and everyone's saying the same thing and thinking the same thing, so everybody must think the same as me. No, we've got to go and pop those. But for me, like that's the symptom. The actual problem is, I think, as you neatly put it, everything's broken. And like we were chatting sort of before we started recording this about how do we try and frame this. And in essence, right, there's no point in today's politics in the Tories having, we've got a policy on online safety, and we're going to do this, and it's going to make these little tweaks, and then Labour coming along and then wanting to do some slightly different tweaks, or we're going to bring in more breakfast clubs. Breakfast clubs are fine, but it's detailed around the edges. What we need is the blank sheet of paper, right? You would not start here if you were designing a political system, a social system, a set of policies to actually make things work, especially where so many of the things don't functionally work anymore. So I think there's an element of we've got to step all the way back from the detail. And you're right, Tory ministers, Labour ministers, whatever, they're all stuck in the machinery, and reform, if they actually got in, would be in the same place. You've got to actually say, what are we going to do, right? Donald Trump, whatever your opinions of him, has come sweeping into power with a list of, I'm going to do this, 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 and he's doing them. A whole load of people don't like the fact that he's doing them, but he had an action list, and oh my God, has he gone at it? We need a government here to do the same.
Yeah,
Not the same policies, but the action bit.
Yeah, you're completely right, because there's been this position within politics for a very, very long time, but within governments, it was this idea that, and I don't know who coined the phrase, but it was this idea of if you get 10% of what you set out to do when you get into government, then you've done a good job, right? Because it's so hard. It's so hard to get anything done. The machines of government, whether it's the UK or France or the US, it's really hard to get stuff done because of the machinery that that effectively is designed to maintain a status quo. But we are way past that now because again, to that initial point of how angry everyone is, they don't care about that anymore. If Labour get through however many years they serve, and at the end of it, Keir Starmer can say, well, I got 10 or 15% of what I set out to do done. I can feel pretty happy about that. No, I'm sorry, you won't,
No.
because you'll be kicked out of office because it's not.
Hounded out.
Absolutely, because it's not good enough. It's like those older ways of doing things won't fly anymore because we're in a very unique, not totally unique. I mean, it's happened. These kinds of things have happened before. They definitely have. But we're in a unique situation, certainly for our lifetime, in that things are so broken within every aspect of our country right now that little solutions and policies, whether you stick to them or not, are not going to move the needle. What you've got to do is make drastic, fundamental change and take risks as well. The other piece is about taking risks. And we have had for many years, and this is not just a Labour thing, it was the same when the Tories were in power, it was the same when the previous Labour government was in power. Governments are risk averse because they are convinced that if they avoid risk, people will trust them, and that's how you stay in power. Going to extremes is the death knell. We're not in that world anymore.
No, we're not. No, we're at the point where things need to change, and they need to change quickly. And look, let's put some context into this, which is last century there were some points where there were significant things that changed. So you had during Edwardian times, you had the initial round of reforms where things like state pension was created, and universal education, and the start of healthcare. You've then obviously had World War II, which was, and World War One, horrible. Let's wipe out a chunk of the population and smash everything. Britain exited World War II, literally broke and broken. We won, but we had so many people dead, and we had literally no money, and yet we still then went and created the welfare state that then bound the country together for the following, half century and more beyond it.
Because World War II was what came out of World War II is what defined everything, defined the world we live in today. But that post World War II order is falling apart now to a certain extent because we've moved on so long. 80 years has gone by, right?
I think it has completely fallen apart. I actually want to point at two things going on in the background where I think it really did fall apart, right? And they're actually related. The first one was the point where Western governments started to devalue their currency. And we had got to the point of people talk about the Harold Wilson's government in the 60s devalued the pound and said, oh, the pound in your pocket's worth the same as it was, which wasn't true. But you then had Nixon took the Americans off the gold standard, and basically the price of money. The reason why inflation has gone absolutely insane since the early 70s is that you replaced money that actually had value of something that was precious with something that you're just printing. Well, we need some more cash, let's go and print some more. But that's really been accelerated and turbocharged to insanity levels after the global financial crash in 2008, where literally Western governments, our own included, the Americans, all of them, printed an ocean of cash. The money that you get now is literally worth less than it was a few years ago. And this is what I think people don't understand. They scratch their heads about inflation. Well, inflation's coming down, so why aren't prices going down? No, inflation slowing down means that things are still getting more expensive. They're just getting more expensive a little slower than they were. But there's this gulf in buying power between money back then and money now. And this, I think, is the heart of a lot of people, and I see people in different countries on social media complaining about the same thing. And we've all been stuck in the same thing. And now you got the Bitcoin people saying, oh, Bitcoin's a solution. Well, what's the value of Bitcoin based on? I mean, it's not actually based on anything as far as I can see. But look, this I think is it, right? There's some big stuff. And people start talking about, conspiracy theories, and reform certainly banged the drum about various big state agendas, but some of it's true. And I think we've got to recognize the fact that some of it's true.
No, I agree. I do agree. I think what I'd like to do though is just focus again back on that era, that period of 1945. That period where, for me, that is the time when, again, it ushered in the new age that we live in, and not just because of a war having been fought and an empires falling and everything else. I mean, that was a part of it, of course. It was because the social contract, if I want to call that, changed because of all of those things that had gone on, not just the war, but also the Great Depression and all those things that had gone on before, where, let's face it, the old way of doing things with an aristocracy and lots of very poor people wasn't really working for most of those people anymore. And so what was ushered in 1945 was a set of solutions to truly massive problems, the problems that really impacted the lives of everybody who lived in this country. And they were based on five, they called them the five giants, right? These five ills, documented by a man after your own heart, a liberal economist, Beveridge, and his report and he put together a report which outlined these five major issues that were effectively preventing Britain from progressing and moving forward, and were a risk and a threat to the established order that was in place. And absolutely. And I was looking back on those a while back, and the five giants that existed back then, all five of them were fundamentally fixed over a period of time. They were fixed, and we went through a phase of progress and huge increase in the standard of living for the average and indeed the poorest in society. And then we declined again. Then we went through this managed decline phase. But when I look back now and I compare where we are today to where we were in 1945, all five of those things that were broken, fundamentally broken for the average British person, for the majority of British people, is broken again today. All five of them. And it almost feels like we need to go. I hate kind of going back and saying we have to do the same thing again, because the same thing didn't actually fix everything.
It won't be the same again, but no. It's the idea of the big picture.
We need to truly acknowledge that these are the true problems that are facing the country right now, the major problems that are facing the country. It's not just that the NHS is a bit broken. It's not just that water is polluted because it's been privatized. It's all connected to all of these things being broken, the entire nation being on its knees. And we have to address those things before we and actually look at how we rebuild properly.
And we've had to think about how to try and summarize, because we're not talking about the beverages, five giants. We're talking about things like want and squalor and idleness, which is a bit controversial, right? I think we can put things into modern buckets.
Modern context.
And the three that we've come up with, and we're going to go into these in more detail in literally the next three shows, and then we'll start pulling other things apart, are jobs, services, and communities. And the way to kind of summarize this is, for too many people, work doesn't pay the bills, right? So there's no point having a job if it doesn't leave you any money, or you work flat out and you can still never get out of debt, or no matter how hard you work or whatever opportunities you've got, you're still going to be in the same place. No wonder people are angry and then they complain about, oh, well, our productivity as a nation is lower than it was. Well, I'm not surprised, because a lot of people are stuck with work that doesn't pay the bills. The second part is services, where whether it's council services or national services or even basic things like infrastructure, these things are crumbling to the point where they're barely working. And it's not about money, right? So when people say the NHS, they actually mean the English NHS, which is different to the Scottish one where I live, to Northern Ireland and to Wales. The NHS is, right, we tip record amounts in at the top and the money gets burned. And then at the bottom, in the front line, you have got basically record starvation of cash and availability of being able to see a consultant and get the operation done. And you can't see a dentist and all of the rest of it. So it's not about money. It's about how we're spending the money. There's no point tipping more money in on top of a bonfire, which is the NHS, because all you're going to get at the bottom is ashes. We need to completely rebuild the thing, right? So that's an idea on services. And the third one is communities, because whilst I disagree fundamentally with some of the racist idiots who are out there shouting at hotels, there is a point where you've got to bring people with you in societies when changes and things are going on. And at the moment, because of the other two, but also how can I put this? The way that things are kind of steamrolling along, we are at the point where I think the social fabric that binds us together is fraying. And it's fraying to the point where people are almost starting to ask the question, well, what does it mean to be British? Who are we when we're now talking about doing some of the things that we're doing? And those buckets, I think, as we talked about them, gives us a clue as to some of the things we can try and do to fix things.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And those three things, for me, they encapsulate everything. They encapsulate, because again, in the same way that the Beveridge report encapsulated the five major issues of the day, these three things are everything for me, because they're fundamentally interlinked as well. They're completely interlinked. Because, and this is actually what was great about that period with the Beveridge report, is fixing one or focusing on one had a positive impact on the others. So that ultimately you were, because again, if you invested in public services, you created jobs that paid, right? This is really what we're getting to. And I think, when I look at it, what you've put together, jobs, services, and community, the fact that we have got ourselves into a situation where a person cannot earn enough money with one job to pay the bills is at the heart of all of everything, right? It's like, that is almost like, again, it's, I keep using the term social contract, but it's kind of like that. It's that the contract that the establishment has with its people is that if you do a hard day's work, you will get paid enough money, not just to make ends meet, but to have a life. What is the point in living if you cannot afford to enjoy it?
Exactly.
And, and services, that's really the bit where most of the policy comes in, right? It's like, ultimately, if every service is broken, then we need to look at, well, why? Why is every service broken? And we need to fix them, not individually, but put a new system in place that means that those services make sense for the 21st.
Because we're at the point where, and this is almost the stock response now from, and I don't want to say the right, as in the political right, but this is kind of where a lot of it comes from. How are we going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for it? How can we afford it? Etc., etc. So you get to the point where, and I gave the Oxford Street thing at the very beginning, right? So because we haven't spent money on enough police officers. So under the Tories, sorry, but there is an element of fact. The Tories slashed police budgets, so we lost 20,000 police officers in the UK, right? And then cut criminal justice to the point where it's going to be 2.5 years before a basic case goes to trial, right? So we can't afford criminal justice and the police, yeah. But then we don't want crime either. Well, you've got to actually spend the money to then save the money, because crime isn't free. And it's the same thing with, we can't afford we can't afford teachers, we can't afford enough doctors and nurses, we can't afford to actually fill the potholes in the roads that are out there where people say, there's a pothole, can we fill it? Oh, we haven't got the money. How on earth is it where we can say we can't afford these things? We can't afford not to have these things, right? It's not a choice of cut. Because when you cut the service, the need doesn't go away, and then it costs you even more to mop up the mess. And there is a thing with politicians of all parties at the moment who don't seem to grasp this rather basic principle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, and this is that bit where it comes back to that LabCon side for you.
Yes.
Ultimately, is that we have a new government. They've been in for a year, a Labour government, but Labour have fallen into the exact trap that governments have been falling into for a good long while now, which is they cannot bear to be seen as risk takers on the economy. All they can see is that if the economy is going well, then everybody else will be fine. And the fact is that doesn't make sense anymore. And by the same token, what do we mean by how do you get the economy to do well? Because the economy hasn't been doing well since 2008. It's a generation since the economy last did well.
This is the bit where I'm going to say the controversial clickable bit. So if you're watching this on X after I posted it, hi. Liz Truss was right. Liz Truss, the worst prime minister we've ever had, the shortest lived prime minister for an eternity, right? Beaten by a lettuce. But Liz Truss was actually right when she tried to go against Treasury orthodoxy, where the Treasury says, oh, you have to do these things, otherwise bad things will happen, right? Her problem is that she was also bonkers, and what she was trying to do wasn't going to work. But she actually recognized the basic problem, which is we can't carry on doing the same stupid things and expect different results.
Yeah. And look, that's what you can expect from us on this channel, is that we are going to say occasional controversial things. Look, Liz Truss was wrong in her execution, but right in the concept, which is that we have to challenge these things. We cannot continue to say, well, if we keep doing the same thing, and just get the economy growing a bit more by another percentage point, then it'll fix all our ills, because it won't, because the problems are too big. They're too huge. And the community bit is so important to me, genuinely, because what we're talking about there is the social fabric of the country. And I don't think a single politician, mainstream politician or non-mainstream politician, is talking about this. They're not really talking about how the glue that holds our country, our society together, is broken. Reform might be talking about how the country's broken and how, the NHS is broken and immigration and all these things, but they're not talking about us.
I think it's worse than that, Nigel. I think it's worse than that. Some of the politicians seem actively trying to pull it apart for political gain. Right? They're not talking about it trying to fix it. They're talking about it wanting to break it more.
Yeah, no, completely. And look, I think that's why the social fabric bit is something that I really, really want us to focus on, because, and I know we're going to focus on all of them, because country right now doesn't just feel broken. It is completely divided. And it's not divided in a Brexit way or in a Labour Tory way, left, right, and all that kind of stuff. It's broken where so many people do not trust and actively hate one another for all kinds of different reasons, that it's not even right to call it the United Kingdom. I don't think it's a word, but it's a disunited kingdom right now. That's how it feels to me.
And look, we both grew up, so that people know this, right? We both grew up in a town called Rochdale in Greater Manchester. And at the moment, we're watching all of this. How can I put this, right? It's racism against Muslims, racism against people with brown skin. Right? And, oh, you don't know what it's like. Well, actually, right, we grew up in a town that had a fairly sizable Asian communities and it is plural, right? People think it's just one group. You had people of Indian, Pakistani, Kashmiri, Bangladeshi, just to name a few, living in Rochdale and growing up, frankly, alongside us. And you know what? I can think back to the 80s when I was, when I was a kid and seeing stuff kicking off. But a lot of the time it was, as you're seeing now, people being bussed in from elsewhere to come and shout on the street at people with brown faces and funny names and thinking different things to them, right? And then other people having to go and shout at the people who are coming shouting to try and get rid of it. So for all of the people who are sat on social media going on about this is an immediate crisis, no, it's not. We've had waves of this before. I can go back to Enoch Powell and the Rivers of Blood speech, right? Basic pig ignorant racism against people that they fear because they're different to them has been with us for a long time. So this cultural ripping apart that's going on, we've had waves of it before, and you can pull it back together. But I think we're at the point where it's getting so strained, and because services and work and the economy and all the rest of it are so out of kilter as well, it really starts to feel a bit dangerous.
No, it does, and look, I never felt. And look, I'm not gonna paint a picture that everything was rosy and perfect in Rochdale. Of course, it wasn't. Nowhere was, and it had a lot of deep-rooted problems. Most of them economic. I think it's a good time for us to wrap it up, and then let's come back very soon and talk about one of those three pieces. And again, whichever one it is, I'm certainly looking forward to it because I think we're going to get in deep.
And this is the point where we have to say like and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you know when these things drop. If you're watching it on YouTube, if you're seeing clips on some of the other platforms, well, come over to YouTube anyway because, yeah, frankly, the more people come over onto that, it's better. Like on YouTube, you'll get the whole experience. You'll get the full episodes. You'll get the reels. Well, they'll be on there as shorts, but you know what I mean? The whole thing.
Perfect. Well, it's been a pleasure, Ian. Enjoy your continued time up in Scotland. I hope the wind has stopped blowing.
Yes, it has. But actually, just as a very interesting note to leave it on, as you mentioned the wind. So we've just had Storm Floris this week come and smash its way across Scotland. A winter storm in the middle of summer. And some of the angry people out there are angry because they think that climate change is a con. Yeah. Never mind. We'll see you on the next one.
We will indeed. Thank you.